Jai Ma Kamakhya, Jai Bhairava, Jai Mathara. Thank you so much for making the time, sir. Today's episode is going to be pretty interesting. We have quite a bit of questions on Batuka Bhairava. So let's make this a Bhairava special. So, one of the first questions that we have received is that there's a lot of interest in learning about the origin story of Bhairava, especially Batuka Bhairava. There is a version where we hear about Apadudharaka. There is a story that we hear about him as Kaliputra. And then we also hear from you on many other episodes where you've spoken about Batuka having all Bhairavas inside him. So, can
Right,
you talk to us about what does this signify from an Upasaka standpoint?
right. So, Joy Ma Kamakhya, Joy Matara, Joy Bhairava. So, today, yeah, we will be speaking on Vatuka Bhairava, which is one of the most interesting and popular topics, and we get a lot of queries also on Vatuka. So, at the initial stages, before even going into the Upasana of a Devata, it is important that we study the original stories of the deity, which means that that comes to us from the sacred lore, the Puranas and the Shastras and the others. What is the story? What is the connecting, the origin uh, that is passed down to us to tradition? Because in those stories, there's a lot of clue about the nature of the Devata. So, Vatuka's one of the primary stories that we have is that the origination of Vatuka Bhairava happened at a time when there was a demon, there was an asura named Apad. Apad is basically any type of obstacles. So Apad created a lot of problems, and when these problems were completely unsolvable and nobody was able to do anything about it, then there was a manifestation of a very small child, and this child is eventually able to remove that asura uh, from whatever activities he was doing, and thus cleared the path for a lot of people. So this therefore makes Vatuka, so the traditional name that comes is Apad Uddharaka Vatuk Bhairava. Apad Uddharaka, one who does Uddharana from Apad. Apad is any type of troubles. So his primary purpose of incarnation was in order to protect and remove any troubles that come in the path of the Upasaka. So Upasaka's first thing about Vatuka, this is the story that we have. This also translates for us into the understanding that Vatuka is that form of Bhairava who is a child who comes and removes all the obstacles that the Upasaka faces on his path. Especially what type of Upasaka? The Upasaka who is doing Shakti Upasana. Anybody who does any worship of Shakti uh, eventually will need somebody to be able to remove the various kinds of obstacles and the badhas and the vignas that come to us during the course of the uh, sadhana that we do. And it is Vatuka who takes up the singular role that he himself is capable of almost removing every type of obstacle that an Upasaka faces. In that sense, he becomes one of the primary Bhairavas. So, in this story, we have another aspect of it that as he removes the Asura, Apad, he removes and destroys the Asura, uh, the realization comes to the Upasakas that he is none other than Shiva himself. So, we are talking in the month of Shravan, which is the most holy month for Lord Shiva. So, Shiva himself, out of kindness for the various Shakta Upasakas, takes the form of a little child as Vatuka in the form of a Bhairava. And I have already mentioned once that when Shiva comes down into this plane, he becomes Bhairava. So Shiva and Bhairava are non-different anyway, fundamentally. It's just that Shiva is transcendental, Bhairava is more earthly. He comes down to this plane. So therefore he takes that Bhayankara Swarupa because the earth is filled with a lot of ignorance, tamas, rajas and all that. To remove that, he takes that fierce form, and here he takes the form of a small child. As a small child, he destroys every kind of obstacle that comes in the path of the Upasaka. In fact, in this context, it is important that what are the obstacles that come? So there are two ways in which the Upasakas can look at the obstacles. One is in initial times means perhaps centuries ago, especially Vatuka Upasana, maybe before 7th or 8th century, etc., when sadhanas were much more fierce than it is today right now, when Upasakas were completely dedicated to their path, there would be sometimes conflicts among Upasakas, which means that suppose you are worshipping Shakti, somebody else is worshipping some other deity, somebody else is worshipping some other deity, and there are conflicts, there are prayogas, there are obstacles that come in the path, so many things, graha badha, this, that, etc. So, so one option was that for each of these various types of obstacles, you keep worshipping them so that those, whether they're Vinayakas, whether they're various other things, basically, you calm them down so that they don't obstruct your path, and then eventually you go to the Moola Devata. So instead of worshipping so many different things, what Shiva did was that you just worship Vatuka Bhairava. He alone takes care of every other graha. And here graha does not necessarily mean only the 9 Navagraha of the Jyotisha, but graha means anything that grasps your consciousness. So even Vinayakas are grahas. So in fact, there are texts of Vatuka description where it is described as his feet are worshipped by the yoginis and the viras. Okay, all the 64 yoginis, the great viras, everybody. Viras are specific types of ganas of Bhairava. They worship his feet, and he alone singularly stops every type of force, occult force, from causing any obstacle to the Upasaka. So he creates like a protective shield around the Upasaka that nothing can obstruct him. From a practical point of view, uh, it is in fact, once you start doing more Vatuka Upasana, you will see that Vatuka in the Shakta path, more prominently in the Kaula Shakta path, Vatuka is almost like Ganapati, almost like, which means that he will single handedly remove all the vignas from your path if he is pleased. And not only that, the additional feature that Vatuka has is that he's a Bhairava, so he can enter the cremation ground also. So if there are paths, Kaula path, there are certain Vira aspects of sadhana which may require entry into cremation grounds. First thing to worship, first deity to worship, there is Vatuka. Vatuka allows you permission to enter, Vatuka protects you, then only you can do other upasanas, whatever needs to be done. So, in that sense, he is a complete Apaduddharaka deity who removes all obstacles. And in some of the tantras, for example, in the Sharada Tilakam and all that, Vatuka mantram is regarded as one something that is like a Mahamantra, that is like a Ramvan, which can grant everything. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, all the four can be granted by the Vatuka Upasana. That is mentioned. So this is the first myth that we understand, first story that we understand. Myth may not be the right word. The next thing that is that he is the putra of Kali. So there's a story that goes that when Maa Kali was in the most furious mood and destroying different types of asuras, and when Maa Kali is like that, when she is very intense, she is intensely engaged in destruction of asuras, so she becomes almost unstoppable even by the gods. So that time they say that there's a child who manifested, and looking at the child, her motherly feelings arose, and then she stopped her violent rampage against everything. And this child is none but Vatuka, and this child is also Shiva, who takes the form of a child in order to stop her. So therefore, the import of this story for the Upasaka is that if Vatuka, who's the child, his blessing comes to a sadhak, then Mahavidya Upasanas, whether it's Kali, whether it's Tara, whether it's Tripur Sundari, or even Chinnamasta or the others, becomes much easier for him. So Vatuka kind of facilitates the success in the other Mahavidya Upasanas. That is his one of the core nature. He smoothens your path. He tells you that how exactly should you approach. Otherwise, there are today everybody worshipping so many Mahavidyas and this and that, etc. But without Vatuka's grace, reaching where the Mahavidya is a little tough. So this is the second meaning of the the story that we have that comes to us about the origins of Vatuka. In fact, here it's important to mention that even the nyasa that is done for Vatuka invokes the mantras of Shiva of the five, the Panchabrahma mantras of Shiva are invoked. The names of Shiva are invoked while doing nyasa. That is primarily because Vatuka is absolutely non-different from Shiva. Shiva takes the form of Vatuka Bhairava in order to liberate and protect the Shakta Upasakas so that they don't have to run from pillar to post for their own protection. They just have to worship Vatuka, and Vatuka in turn takes care of the whole protection of the Upasaka until the time he is absolutely close to the Moola Devata.
Right, sir. You spoke about the mantras. So, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the Batuka Bhairava Moola mantra and the Ashtottara Naamavali in terms of their significance and their power?
Okay, so that's a good question. So Vatuka Bhairava Moola Mantra, before we go there, let's understand that there are two primary variations of the Vatuka Bhairava Moola Mantra. So the one that comes to us, the older version that comes to us from the Rudrayamala Tantra, starts with Omkara. Whereas the same mantra, when we find from later texts, like Tantric compendiums like the Brihat Tantrasar, which is a 15th century text compiled in Bengal area, there is no pranava is mentioned. The omkara is not mentioned. Instead, there is the maya vija that is mentioned, which is the tantric omkara. That's how it starts, and it becomes a 21 akshari mantra of Vatuka. So this mantra itself is a mantra that is capable of granting, removing all kinds of obstacles, whether it be obstacles of the three realms, which is physical obstacle, emotional obstacle, there is spiritual obstacle, anything, any kind of thing that is obstructing and causing obstruction to the Upasaka can be removed by the power of this Moola Mantra. So that is the main aim of the Moola Mantra, and generally it is a very safe mantra to do. Once somebody has started into Vatuka Upasana to a degree, the Upasana of the Moola Mantra is very good to do. It is like a extremely useful and helpful. And as one does Moola Mantra sadhana properly, uh, one thing is very important. If somebody is doing the Moola Mantra of Vatuka, in order to see results from this sadhana, you have to put Vatuka above all the other deities. So that sadhana has to be primary, which means that if you're worshipping multiple deities and also some 15 minutes of Vatuka, then you will not see the results clearly. So when you do when anybody does the Moola Mantram sadhana, it has to be primary till the point that the Anushthan is completed. Now after that, you can reduce the quantity. The Bhairava Ashtottara Nama, the Vatuka Ashtottara Nama, which is basically a selection of 108 names from the various Sahasranamas of Vatuka that we have. It comes from the Rudrayamal again, is extremely potent. In fact, it is so powerful that of all the Ashtottara Namas of the Devatas that we have and that I've seen till now, everything else is on one side, and the Vatuka Ashtottara is by itself like a nuclear bomb. It has, however, two aspects, which is that there are the cremation ground aspects of Vatuka, which are also stuti is done of those names also. So therefore, it requires a little bit of guidance and caution. I do not generally, ask somebody to do a lot of the upasana of this until I know that the person is capable of it. Little bit of chanting is fine. In some specific cases, if there is an indication, a nimitta, or the grahas indicate that XYZ individual can be able to do this particular sadhana, then I may tell them that a little bit of the Ashtottara Nama has to be done. Or for example, as I mentioned once, those people who are connected to us, they do on Sankranti Tithis a little bit of the Ashtottara Nama, which is okay. However, the deeper upasana of this Ashtottara Nama, um, I'm saying this in the sense of as a general knowledge. It should not be taken as a guidance that you should start doing the Ashtottara just like that. So Ashtottara of Vatuka Bhairava requires some amount of depth in your sadhana first and some guidance so that you can take it properly in the sense, because there are certain names which are linked to the Vamachar and the cremation ground. Vamachar is fine. Cremation ground, the moment you start using names of cremation ground, you have to be a little steady, because you are not doing it, if you're doing it once or twice, it is fine. But if you're doing it more extended times, so those energies may activate, and you need to be able to sustain that without getting derailed. That is very important. However, on the other hand, the Ashtottara Nama of Vatuka Bhairava, once if a person is suitable for it, I mean, there is no replica of it. It is so powerful. Just by repetition of it, just by doing anushtans of it. For example, there are anushtans of this which require, say, chanting of 11,000 times with sankalpam. Okay, once the sankalpam is taken, then 11,000 chantings of this, if it is done in a period of, say, 50 days or even 2 months, something like that, regularized anushthan wise, absolutely impossible results can also be achieved. But remember that if your karma is very strong, then Vatuka, as with the nature of all Bhairava, he makes you steady. So you cannot flinch. You have to go through it like that. Any type of abhichara, any type of black magic, any type of these, that things, the Ashtottara Nama is very good in removing. It is also extremely powerful, potent protection from enemies, from diseases, any of these things. I mean, this is like the most unique names of Bhairava. And apart from the normal usage of this, there are higher prayogas of this Ashtottara Nama. For example, Ashtottara Nama also has three kramas. One is the Srishti krama of chanting, which is you chant it normally. Then there's the Sthiti krama, where you have to establish an energy, then you chant it in a different manner. And then there's a Samhara krama, where you need to destroy something, transform something. Then there is a manner of chanting. Apart from that, there is a lot of Samputikaranas that can be done to the Ashtottara Nama with various Bija mantras to achieve various desired goals. But again, this Ashtottara Nama, Prayogas or Sadhanas, etc., should be done only under a capable mentor, and one should not rush into it. When you are steady, then only you slowly understand. But yes, the Ashtottara is extremely powerful, with a little bit of edge of danger also invoked in it. Whereas the Apaduddharaka Moola mantra in that sense is very safe to do. There is no harm, no danger at all. You just have to have very strong faith on Vatuka, because remember, it's a child deity. And I had mentioned this before. Whenever you deal with a child deity, it is not enough to just do japa. It is not enough to be ritually perfect. You have to connect emotionally. Then only he or she will start responding to you.
Right, so thank you so much. And you spoke about the role of Bhairava in Mahavidya sadhanas. So can you
Yes.
delve a little bit more into how differently Vatuka Bhairava guides you into a Mahavidya versus how a Kala Bhairava would?
Okay, so this is a more complicated question. First of all, you have to understand the difference between Vatuka and Kalabhairava. In my opinion, Vatuka Upasana is fit for everybody at the beginning stages, because Vatuka is a child. So he has all the three Swarupas. There is the Sattvic form, there is the Rajasika form, there is a Tamasika form, and there is a another Dhyanam of Vatuka which is not specific to any of these forms, but it's very popular. So Vatuka, first of all, as you keep doing it, it creates a certain kind of power in the mind and body. Aadhara is the creation. He is the lord of the Kshetra. Kshetra is your mind and your body. So he knows that what are you capable of digesting. That's very simply put, the capacity for spiritual digestion. And what is spiritual digestion? Nothing but the digestion of reality. Every one of us at all points of the other, sometime we try to run away from reality, whatever is uncomfortable for us. So in order to accept it, we put up some kind of a story in our own head, a narrative. We build a narrative. Narratives are nothing but something that cushions you from reality. Vatuka is somebody who has no narrative. Bhairava has no narrative. He is what is. Jo hai so hai. However much you can accept reality without flinching, without causing any disturbance in your heart, that is the degree to which your uh, adhara, your mind and body has become steady. If there is disturbance that is being caused, that means that there is steadiness still yet to be achieved. So, in that sense, Vatuka is a child. So, Vatuka removes the obstacles. Kala Bhairava is the adult form of Bhairava. He is extremely fierce. He's fierce because his whole manifestation has two aspects to it. First aspect is that he comes out of the Krodha of Shiva in order to teach Brahma a lesson. But remember one thing, deities, devatas, and the rishis, even their anger is a blessing. They do not get angry like you and me gets angry. No, they have reached a stage where normal anger, normal passions don't affect them. So their anger is what is called a righteous anger, a divine anger. ये normal anger नहीं है. This righteous and divine anger transforms people. So what he does is that when he sees somebody, when he wants basically that there is a point of ego that is there, something that is called a blind spot in the individual, या तो जिसको in Jyotisha, which is called the eighth house is your nija dosha, your own errors that you are not capable of accepting and seeing, because the ego doesn't want to accept. That's the normal human situation, right? We always, the ego has 1 million excuses to tell you that why you are not wrong. I have rarely seen anybody being able to accept freely. Freely is very important. I mean, you put pressure into it, or you think that, okay, right now I will say sorry, that means I have an escape. No. Free acceptance is a very different thing. A genuine understanding and acceptance that, okay, this is my error. Very tough. Eighth house is the house in your horoscope which you cannot see. That is why it's called the blind spot. That is why it is the Nija dosha. And Bhairava is the deity who controls the figure 8. 8 is also the door to infinity. So what he does is that this ego, like in the case of Brahma, that did not allow him to see anything greater than himself. He said that, what did he say? He says that I am the greatest. Who is Shiva? I don't know. I'm like the boss, supreme boss. So what he does, he cuts off the head immediately. But he doesn't kill him. He's not going to kill you. Kill you till you are finished. He's just cutting off that one particular head. So it is going to be a painful lesson. But from that lesson, you will emerge into something much more stronger. So it is like a rebirth he will cause to you. So that is the first thing that Kalabhairava can do to you, which is that he causes a rebirth. So uh, in context of this, you will see that um, Mahakaal in Ujjain, there is the great shrine, the legendary shrine of Mahakaal Ujjain, which is the center of India in a way. There is a specific cultural saying there, traditional saying that goes, कि महाकाल के नगरी में there is only one king, that is Mahakal. So people who are kings, who are leaders, who are head of anything for that matter, when they go to visit Mahakal, they visit Mahakal and they come back. They don't stay overnight because it is believed and it's been seen, whether it's political leaders and all specifically, if you stay overnight, very soon you are going to get into trouble. You may lose the seat or the power and the authority that you have. So what exactly this indicates is that his natural tendency of Mahakaal Bhairava and Kalabhairava are almost the same deity. There's no difference. One deity only. दो तीन नहीं है, एक ही है. So what he does is that where your ego is attached, that is where he is going to cut it down to size. Okay, and nobody living likes his ego to be cut down. That's the reality of life. Okay, anybody, whatever saint ho ya sinner ho, all stories they will put, but at the end of the day, nobody likes their ego being cut to size, and that is what he does. And we fight and fight. He doesn't fight. He doesn't argue. He just cuts it off. Done. So that by that pain you can rise higher. That is the whole point of his existence. That is what he does first, and that is what makes him a terrific guru. By the way, if you want spiritual progress, there is nobody like Kalabhairava. He will directly fast track your process. He is not going to wait too many times ki acha, let's go through some therapy and counseling and let's see that okay, I have some errors, let's understand. He's not in the mood to argue. He just do his stuff, and by that either you will grow, or if you don't have the capacity, then maybe not in this lifetime, some other lifetime you will grow. But generally, a devata like Bhairava, who is none other than Shiva, he intervenes into a person only when he sees that there is growth that is going to happen after that. So it's like the trimming of the whole garden that is done so that new bushes and shrubs can come up, which are much more potent, powerful, and beautiful. Because after one crosses the Ashtam Bhava in the Jyotish, then you go to the Navam Bhava. Navam Bhava is the Devata Sthan, where the deity is, your Bhagya is arising, your deity's blessing is coming from the ninth house. So only after death or rebirth, let's use the word rebirth, death is too dramatic because he doesn't kill anybody. He just gives you the lesson, and from that lesson you will rise higher. So that is what Kalabhairava does. Now, Kalabhairava Kripa is uh, uh, very useful for coming to your specific question. Kalabhairava Kripa is extremely useful for cremation ground practices of uh, Kali, Tara specifically. So, cremation ground, there are a few things. So, I'll tell you these things. Cremation ground matters are not specific to texts. So you cannot rely on shastras कि यहाँ पे ये लिखा है, वैसा नहीं होता है. People who actually do upasanas in the cremation grounds, there are things that you will learn, some from people, mentors, some from yourself, etc. So it is not a very well-defined process. Remember this. So the shastras are more concerned with the traditional worship that is happening in the temples in your house and other places. Cremation ground is a gray area. Cremation ground is your eighth house. So once you enter there, rules are all off a little bit. So here what happens, Vatuka is the first step, which means that if your Vatuka sadhana is correct, if somebody is doing a cremation ground process, the moment you enter the ground, you come closer, you will know whether you are meant to go there or not go there. Indications will come. Okay. Kala Bhairava, on the other hand, is the deity who gives you the power to, he's like the boss of the cremation ground. Okay, he's the Purusha Tattva in the cremation ground, and his blessing makes sadhana specifically of Kali, Tara, and Chinnamasta happen very, very fast. It's unbelievable amount of speed that it can happen. So he is like the Purna Swarupa Bhairava. He has the absolute knowledge of the universe. He is the Purusha, is the Adi Purusha. He is Shiva even before we knew who was Shiva. So he's like that. So he can give you that strength to do the most intense of practices in those liminal settings, and succeed. He's like a guru. Bhairava has a guru tattva in him, by the way. Vatuka, one of the reasons why it's so popular is because Vatuka, if you do dhyanam on Vatuka, and if you focus on your heart and you keep chanting, keep doing Vatuka mantras, he will start guiding you a little bit. And this guidance is subject to how far you are able to, again, comes back to the ego. The ego is your blocker. If you can remove the ego, reduce the ego, then that guidance will help you. Kalabhairava, on the other hand, he also guides. His knowledge is much more vast, much more intense, but he will force your ego to come down. So, in the same, like in the Mahakaal story that we're saying, so who is the person who can survive overnight in Mahakaal without any problem? Somebody whose ego is already out. Okay. So, literally somebody whose ego. So, if you're somebody whose ego has been completely, you have removed your ego, or you have been completely at surrenderance, genuine one internally, that is the one, that is the person whom Mahakala is not going to cause any problems. Okay. If you are somebody prominent, if you're an ordinary person, then it doesn't matter anyway. Okay. So this is the thing, essence between difference between Kala Bhairava and Vatuka Bhairava. So Kala Bhairava sadhana is extremely good, both from protection point of view, in the cremation ground, as well as for getting guidance and getting speeding up your sadhana, uh, in the extreme Vamachar, extreme Virachar practices. This is a Vira practice, remember. So whether it's cremation ground, whether it's worship on the Shava, on the dead bodies, or on the pyres, etc. Actually, there you need the blessings of Kala Bhairava. He's the protector, he's the boss, he will tell you. Vatuka is the one who clears the path up to that point. Once you are inside that setting, then it is Kala Bhairava who gives you the blessing for succeeding in that sadhana. That's, remember, the Moola Devata is still Kali and Tara, but you can succeed only when your tattvas are aligned, and that when the Purusha Tattva inside you is perfectly steady, that you don't move around and on. That is one of the key differences between the Kala Bhairava and Vatuka Bhairava in terms of guidance, in terms of the experience, especially when it comes to cremation grounds.
Thank you so much, sir. It gives a lot of perspective into how we need to evolve to get there. Another interesting question that we have got is, we've spoken a lot in the past about the commonalities between Skanda and Vatuka Bhairava. You've said that Skanda is more on the protector of the Vedic pantheon, whereas Vatuka is more on the tantric side. But from an Upasaka's perspective, can you throw some light on how to worship them? How are they different, and some significance around that?
Okay. So the similarity between Skanda and Vatuka is already a thing that is documented in certain very old texts. Somebody had sent me a manuscript, copy of a manuscript from Nepal, which I don't know, maybe 9th century or something, where Vatuka and Skanda is equated as the same deity. Okay, both of them are considered as the son of Shiva. So Vatuka, we already see that it's Shiva who is coming down, and since he comes down, so the other way of representing is that he's actually the son of Shiva. Just like Skanda is considered to be born from Shiva, okay, Shiva Tattva. So these two are very similar in that sense. Number one. Number two, the other similarity as the Upasaka you will see is that both Batuka Bhairava and Skanda are very fast in responding, extremely fast. Vatuka is Vatuka is the fastest of all deities that I've seen. Once a connection, genuine connection with Vatuka Bhairava is built for an Upasaka, the results are very fast, super fast. Same with Skanda. If you build a contact with Skanda through the Upasana and the sadhanas, you will see that uh, his response for a sadhaka, for an upasaka, is extremely fast, is very quick. He doesn't take too much time. So these two are the, and there is a third component that is very similar. Both Skanda and Vatuka act as a guru to the upasakas after a point. They are very clear gurus, but remember, they can guide as long as you are ready to receive what they are saying. Which means that basically, again, the ego has to be reduced. When ego, I don't mean just pride, I mean that your sense of self has to become very loose. Why it has become loose? Otherwise, what happens is that you have defined yourself in a certain way. So this is me, this is what I like, this is what I dislike, these are the things, etc. So if there is an instruction that is coming from the devata which is contrary to what you like, the mind is going to refuse to accept it, and it will start putting various types of excuses. Now the funny thing is that the moment you resist an instruction that is coming from a deity, whether it's Vatuka Bhairava or Skanda, they will stop giving you instructions. So they are not in the mood to run after you to get things done. They never do, in fact. So it's your job. to reduce your ego when you reach them, so that you can be properly, thoroughly guided. When and after whatever point of time they decide to activate their Guru Tattva for the Upasaka. So there is a Guru Tattva in both of these deities. Kala Bhairava also has a Guru Tattva, but Kala Bhairava requires that strength inside to reach him. Remember that. Kala Bhairava and Vatuka's difference is Vatuka has a mildness in him. It's very beautiful. In fact, when deep Vatuka Upasana is done, as an Upasaka, you will feel that there is there's like a very mild, very beautiful, like a light breeze that is going on inside you. Okay, like a very gentle wind. That type of feeling will also come, and there is a feeling of absolute, uh, a little bit of the vastness of Advaitam that comes to the Upasaka. By the way, even Skanda Upasana is very good to have an experience of what we traditionally call as Advaitam, the oneness of the consciousness. He gives it very quickly. So does Vatuka. Again, these two are very similar to them. Where they differ in terms of historical development is that Vatuka is obviously a deity who's linked to the tantric path. So Vatuka Upasana, you can use Panchatattwas, you can use purified alcohol, even in the temples, alcohol or that has been consecrated is offered to Vatuka Bhairava. In the normal Skanda Upasana, you cannot do that. What I mean is the Vedic mark of Skanda Upasana. There are certain processes which, very hardcore Devi Upasaks, specifically those who are in the Kola Margam and those who have also worshipped Skanda, they can tell you there are some other processes involved here, but I will not mention those in public at the moment. But generally, Skanda Upasana that is done is more in the Sattvic mode. So, that being said, Vatuka can also be worshipped in the Sattvic mode. There is no problem in it, initially at least. So that is this thing. Vatuka is a child form. So if you give Sattvic, if somebody wants to give very Sattvic Naivedyam, here also there is another similarity with Vatuka and Skanda. Both of these deities require, if you are doing the proper sadhana, mantra sadhana, you have to offer some kind of a Naivedyam to them. That is that accelerates your sadhana very fast. Instead of just doing japa and offering no Naivedyam, you have to offer something. Now, there are a list of things that can be offered. We'll go into that later. But these similarities also indicate that perhaps at a very ancient point, maybe that Vatuka Bhairava was modeled around Skanda by the Tantric Upasakas to help them in the Tantric path, with the addition that Vatuka being a Bhairava, so he can also go into the cremation ground route and other things. Or maybe there's a parallel development. We cannot say which one is that, but which one is how it came about. But there is definitely a strong link between the two at an historical time. Now today, of course, there's a difference in the sense that the path is different, the mantras are different, the upacharas that are the method of worship is different. uh, for Skanda, for example, the worship of the veil produces very quick results. Okay, so there is another thing to be mentioned here. As the Bhairava Krama increased by, for example, the I think the 13th century or something like that, along with the Ashtamatrikas that were already present previously, whose worship used to happen, we find the emergence of the Ashtabhairavas. They are the counterpart of the Ashtamatrikas. So in this counterpart, even we already had the presence of Komari. Komari was the Ashtamatrika, one of the matrikas was Komari, which is nothing other than the feminine energy, the Shakti of Skanda. Skanda himself, not his consort, Skanda himself, but in a feminine format, okay, in a Shakti format. So that is Komara. Kumari is the deity. So along with that, there was formation of Chanda Bhairava, who came into existence in the Ashtabhairava Krama, whose iconography is very similar to Skanda. Only thing is that he is a Bhairava, which means that he can take in Karana. Karana and other Bhog and all these things can be given to him. But what I have found is that Vatuka and Skanda definitely have this common link, because there are many others. Guru Tattvam comes in very quickly in Vatuka and Skanda. In fact, Skanda as a guru is very popular. Even in South also, in Tamil, there are texts, right, where the Skanda Guru link is very well established there. Okay. Similarly, in Vatuka also, as one keeps worshipping, the Guru Tattva becomes activated inside and guidance comes very quickly. One specific difference, though, now that we have spoken of the similarities, one difference that I found in Skanda Upasana is that Skanda mantras, if you are doing too strongly, with the right guidance, if you have done sufficient amount of Purushcharana, Skanda Upasana as one goes deeper, there is avesham of skanda that happens in the body. Okay, be very clear about it. It will happen. So avesham means there is. It's as if you will be possessed by skanda, and during that time you will not have consciousness of your immediate surroundings. It may happen for a period of 2-3 seconds, microsecond, or longer period of time. In fact, in that state of frenzy and avesham is when you can do various kind of intense penances that we see during, in the festivals of skanda, where people are piercing their bodies and things like that. So that is possible when you are absolutely taken over by the aura of skanda, and that power is so intense that you forget your physical presence. Your body does not cause pain to you. Your mind is gripped by his absolute intense avesham of skanda. With skanda upasana, as one goes deeper, degrees of avesham will happen. In Bhairava also the degrees of avesham happens, by the way, after a point. With Vatuka it is less, but Kalabhairava it is much more. Avesham does happen to some degree. So these are the more or less similarities. However, at this point, this is only from the historical point of view, but so far as the sadhana is concerned, each has its own path and mantra, the offerings, and it's best to follow what is, accepted in the path.
Thank you so much, sir. There is also another perspective that we often hear is that Vatuka is more considered as a Devi Putra, whereas Skanda is considered more as son of Shiva. Is there some significance to it, and does it contribute to ways in which they should be worshipped?
Very interesting, very good question. In fact, one of the best questions that on this topic. So yes, so when we are discussing, we say that Vatuka is the son of Kali, right? Whereas Vatuka is the Vatuka is the son of Maa Kali, and Vatuka is Shiva incarnated. So the Shiva Tattva is there, but also, as it happens with all Bhairava Sarupas, the Shakti is inherent in them. Okay, tremendous amount of Shakti. So Vatuka is another aspect that is very important to understand, that almost practically speaking, the blessings of Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati, all the three things can be given by Batuka Bhairava. Fully, absolutely, completely. If he is happy with a person, he can give the blessings that these three Mahashaktis can give to an Upasaka. However, the nature of Bhairava is that he has the Shakti internalized in him. Okay, so he's a Shiva Swarupa who is more oriented towards Shakti. So therefore is very dynamic. Whereas traditionally Shiva is the Purusha Tattva. Purusha is Nirvikara. He is not interested in the manifested world. He is transcendental. But the moment he's come down, he has accepted Shakti completely into himself, and therefore he can do a lot of things. Same way, Vatuka, that is why we say that Vatuka is the Shakti Putra or the son of Kali, like that. This indicates that whenever there is a, here is the thing, whenever Shakti becomes prominent in a deity, in a vigraha, the mannerism of worship will change slightly from the Vedic Krama. So Vedic Krama requires certain disciplined manner of organized manner of approach, whereas the moment there is a increase in the Shakti Tattva in a deity, what happens is that, so to give a rough example, so when there is a Vedic krama of a deity that is followed, it is like you do a pradakshina that is clockwise, which is the standard way in which you do in places, temples. The moment Shakti becomes higher, it starts anti-clockwise movement. So it has to see what can be done to the other side. Things that you do not want to see, it will go through that side, and then it will achieve the same goals. And in fact, as Kali Yuga increases, Shakti Tattva keeps increasing. That is one of the undeniable realities of the world. So as Kali Yuga increases, whichever, whether it's a dharma, whether it's a path, wherever Shakti is given prominence, that is the path that will increase and become dominant. It is the nature of this age. Now, because Vatuka is a Bhairava, so therefore he enters the cremation ground also. Therefore, and that is the nature of Bhairava. Bhairava increases enters the cremation ground. Though when we are worshipping Shiva, and even in the Soma Skanda Sarupa of Shiva, Shiva himself is Rudra. There is the descriptions of Shiva do mention cremation grounds and all that. But the Upasana that we do in temples is a very Sattvic Upasana. There are all Sattvic ingredients used. During the month of Shravan, half the people are already eating veg. Okay, so there are Sattvic pujas and all that happening. So therefore, what Shiva has done is that there is a bifurcation of his energy that is happening. He is the Purusha Tattva, there is the Shakti Tattva, and then there are the Shiva Parivara, and the two children that is there. Okay. In the form of Bhairava, Shakti Tattva is inherent in him. And once Shakti Tattva becomes inherent, then immediately there is the offerings of Panchatattva comes in, offerings of the cremation ground come in, all these things become very prominent. Whereas in Skanda, in the normal sense of Upasana, what is done, in traditionally 90% of the cases, it is absolutely Sattvic Upasana that has to be done, because it is still in the Vedic Krama that the Upasana is done. So discipline and consistency and hard work, these are very, very important. See, the same story again, I had mentioned this once. Skanda and Ganapati is this difference very clearly understandable. Ganapati is also known as the son of Parvati, right? So when he is told that you go around the world, he takes the shortcut route, but that also gives the result and does it. Whereas Skanda, he does that, he takes the Mayura and it goes across the world. So the traditional, orthodox, full-scale, disciplined path, that is the Vedic. Basically, the deities who are aligned to the Vedic Krama will prefer those. Whereas the moment Shakti becomes prominent, then you do a more Tivra path, faster path. Let's go, like, you put it to second gear and third gear, your car, and you want to go quicker. So you use the Panchatattvas, you use the cremation ground, you use the other things that you would otherwise not touch, because that's the way it is done. So you enter that route and you want a quicker result to manifest. So that is the nature of Shakti. There's a very good difference that is there between Skanda and Vatuka. There is, though, one aspect of Skanda where these offerings can also be done, but that requires certain guidance, and definitely that requires a Diksha in a Kola Marga. If you're not just any Tantra Marga, if you have Dakshinachara Diksha, Samayachara Diksha, you cannot do that. Only if you have a proper Kola Diksha, then only there is, if somebody guides you further, there is a way of worshipping Skanda, even in the Vamachara method. But let's not go there at the moment.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. With this, we'll close this episode. Once again, thank you so much. Jai Ma Kamakhya, Jai Bhairava, Jai Mata.